Picture this. It's the 27th of the month. You open your banking app and somehow, your account is almost empty. Again. You got paid less than 2 weeks ago. You didn't buy anything crazy. You didn't go on a vacation. You didn't splurge on anything you'd call a luxury. And yet, here you are stretching the last few dollars until payday like you're performing financial gymnastics. And the worst part? You've been here before. Exact same spot, same date, same feeling in your chest, that mix of confusion and low-key embarrassment. And you tell yourself, next month will be different. But next month comes, and somehow it's the same story with a slightly different cast of characters. If that hit a little close to home, stay with me, because this video is going to explain exactly why that keeps happening, and it has nothing to do with how much money you make. My name is Ben, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart, hard-working people keep losing the financial game even when they're playing by the rules. If you're someone who earns a decent income, tries to be responsible, but still feels like money just slips through your fingers no matter what you do, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out. We're going to get into some stuff today that most financial channels completely skip over, and I think by the end of this, something is going to click for you in a way that nothing else has before. Here's the thing. We have been sold a very convenient lie about why people struggle financially. The story goes like this. You don't have enough money because you don't earn enough money. So the solution is simple. Earn more, get a promotion, pick up a side hustle, work harder. And look, I'm not saying earning more is a bad idea, but I want to challenge something, because here is what the data actually shows, and this one always stops people cold. A study by the National Endowment for Financial Education found that roughly 70% of lottery winners end up broke within a few years of their windfall. 70%! These are people who received hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars, and the majority of them ended up right back where they started, or worse. Now think about that for a second. If the problem was simply not enough money, then getting a massive pile of money should fix it permanently. But it doesn't, and that tells us something really important. The problem was never the amount of money. The problem was the pattern those people had around money. And the scary part is, most of us are running the exact same patterns, just on a smaller scale. Think about someone you know, maybe it's even you, who got a raise at work. Real excitement, right? Finally, a little breathing room. But 3 or 4 months later, somehow the financial stress is back, just wearing a slightly more expensive outfit. The car payment went up, the apartment got upgraded, the dinners out became more frequent, the lifestyle just quietly expanded to absorb every extra dollar. Economists actually have a name for this. They call it lifestyle inflation, and it is one of the most financially destructive forces that nobody talks about at the dinner table. So, what exactly is a money pattern? I want to make this really concrete because this word gets thrown around and it loses its meaning. A money pattern is any automatic, repeated behavior around money that you do without consciously deciding to do it. It's the thing you do on autopilot. It's the Friday evening where you're tired from the week and you just order delivery without even thinking about it. Not because you planned to, not because you budgeted for it, just because that's what you always do on Fridays. It's the Amazon cart that somehow has 14 things in it by Thursday. It's checking out at the grocery store and being mildly shocked at the total every single week, even though you shop at the same store, buy roughly the same things every single week. These aren't moral failures. They are not signs that you're irresponsible or that you don't care about your future. They are just habits, deeply grooved, automatic responses, and they are running quietly in the background of your financial life like software you forgot you installed. And here's what most people don't realize. You cannot budget your way out of a pattern problem. You can write the most detailed, color-coded, beautifully organized spreadsheet in the history of personal finance, and if the underlying patterns don't change, that spreadsheet is going to collect digital dust within 3 weeks. I've seen it happen 100 times. The reason budgets fail for most people isn't because budgeting is a bad idea. It's actually a great idea. They fail because a budget is a plan, and patterns are stronger than plans. Your brain is not going to stop craving the comfort of that Friday takeout just because a cell in a spreadsheet says food, $300. The craving doesn't read spreadsheets. So before we talk about any tactical financial moves, we need to understand what's actually driving the pattern. And that means we need to talk about something that most financial channels are deeply uncomfortable discussing: the psychology underneath the behavior. Look, I know some of you clicked on this video for tips and strategies, and we will absolutely get there. But if I just give you 5 budgeting hacks without addressing this part, I'd be doing you a disservice. So bear with me for a few minutes, because this is where it gets really interesting. Your relationship with money was essentially programmed into you before you were old enough to have an opinion about it. Think about the home you grew up in. Was money talked about openly, or was it a source of tension and secrecy? When something broke, was the response calm problem-solving or stress and arguments? Did you grow up hearing things like, "We can't afford that," or "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "Rich people are greedy"? Because here's what happens. Your young brain takes all of those experiences and conversations, and it builds a framework, a set of unconscious rules about what money means, how it behaves, whether it's safe, whether you deserve it, whether having it makes you a good or bad person. And then you spend the rest of your adult life operating from that framework without ever questioning where it came from. Dr. Brad Klontz, a financial psychologist who has done serious academic research in this space, identified what he calls money scripts. These are the core beliefs people hold about money that drive their behavior. And his research showed that most people's money scripts were formed in childhood and are largely unconscious, meaning most of us are making financial decisions today based on conclusions our 8-year-old self drew from watching our parents argue about the electric bill. That is wild when you sit with it. And it explains so much: why some people feel physically anxious when their savings account gets too low, why others feel guilty when they spend on themselves, why some people unconsciously sabotage financial progress right when things start going well.
Now you might be thinking, okay, Ben, this is getting a little therapy adjacent. What does this have to do with saving and investing? And that's a fair pushback. Here's the connection. If your unconscious belief is that money is scarce and always slips away, you will unconsciously behave in ways that confirm that belief. You'll spend it before it can disappear on its own. If your belief is that wealthy people are somehow morally compromised, you'll resist accumulating wealth because some part of you doesn't want to become that person. If your belief is that you're just bad with money, you'll keep finding evidence to support that story and dismiss evidence to the contrary. The pattern is downstream of the belief, and until you look at the belief, the pattern doesn't change, no matter how many budgeting apps you download. All right, let's bring this back down to earth with some numbers, because I want you to feel the weight of what patterns actually cost you over time. This is the part that people find uncomfortable, but it's important. Let's say you're 35 years old. Every week, without really thinking about it, you spend an extra $150 on things that are pattern-driven: the mindless takeout, the subscriptions you forgot you have, the impulse buys, the upgraded version of the thing you didn't need to upgrade. $150 a week. That's $600 a month. Now, $600 a month might not feel catastrophic. It's not flashy spending. It's just the low-level financial static that most people accept as normal. But here's what that actually cost you. If instead of spending that $600, you invested it every month starting at age 35 in a basic index fund averaging a 7% annual return, which is actually a conservative estimate based on long-term stock market historical averages, by the time you're 65, that $600 a month becomes approximately $680,000. $680,000 from $150 a week, money you currently don't even notice spending. That's not a typo, and that's not financial wizardry. That's just compound interest doing what it does when you give it time and consistency. The pattern that feels like nothing today is costing you a retirement. It's costing you options. It's costing you the version of your future where you actually have choices. And here's what makes this even more striking. The issue isn't that people don't know they should be saving and investing. Almost everyone knows that. A 2023 survey by Bankrate found that 57% of Americans say they feel behind on retirement savings, more than half. These are not people who are ignorant about the importance of saving for the future. They know. They just can't seem to close the gap between knowing and doing. And that gap, that space between what you know you should do and what you actually do, that gap is pattern. That gap is psychology. That gap is exactly what we're talking about today. Let me walk you through the 3 most common destructive money patterns I see, and I want you to honestly check yourself against each one as I describe them, not to judge yourself, just to get honest about what's actually going on. The first one is what I call emotional spending. This is using purchases to regulate your mood, and it is far more common than people admit. It's not just retail therapy as a joke concept, it's a real, documented psychological mechanism. When you're stressed from work, when you've had a frustrating day, when you're bored, when you're anxious about something you can't control, your brain looks for relief, and purchases deliver a very fast, very reliable dopamine hit. The purchase doesn't even have to be something you particularly want. The act of buying something, choosing it, clicking confirm, watching it arrive, gives your brain a little reward signal. And if you've done that enough times, your brain starts to associate spending with comfort. So now, stress at work isn't just a work problem, it's also a financial problem because your coping mechanism costs money. And the cruel irony is that the financial stress caused by the spending then creates more emotional distress, which then triggers more spending. It's a loop, and it feeds itself. The second pattern is what I call avoidance. And this one is sneaky because it looks like being calm. People who run this pattern don't obsess over money. They just don't look at it. They don't open the bank statements. They don't check the balance before they spend. They pay bills on autopilot without really reviewing them. They have a general sense of their financial situation, but they couldn't tell you specifics because they deliberately keep it vague. And the reason they keep it vague is that looking closely feels threatening. There's a fear, conscious or not, that if they really look at the numbers, what they see will be too overwhelming, too far gone, too shameful to deal with. So they don't look, and the not looking feels like peace, but it's actually just delayed panic. Because the numbers don't change just because you're not watching them. The debt doesn't stop growing. The savings don't magically appear. Avoidance is just anxiety in a trench coat. The third pattern is the comparison trap, and this one has gotten significantly worse in the social media era. Human beings are wired to benchmark themselves against people around them. It's a deeply rooted social instinct. But the problem is that social media has completely distorted our reference group. You're no longer comparing yourself to your actual neighbors and coworkers whose financial situations you know something about. You're comparing yourself to the most curated, highlight reel version of thousands of people, many of whom are either in debt to maintain that image or are genuinely in a completely different income bracket. And when the comparison triggers inadequacy, the response is often to spend, to close the perceived gap between your reality and the image you're consuming. Economists call this keeping up with the Joneses, but in 2024, the Joneses are influencers with sponsorships, and you're trying to keep up with a fiction. Okay, so now that we've diagnosed what's really going on, let's talk about what you actually do about it. And I want to be clear, I'm not going to give you a 5-step miracle system. What I'm going to give you is an honest, practical framework that requires actual effort, because anything worth building requires actual effort. The first thing you need to do is get radically honest with your numbers, not in a painful shame spiral way, just clinically, like a doctor looking at a chart. Pull up your last 3 months of bank statements. Don't judge what you see, just categorize it. How much went to housing, food, transport, subscriptions, random spending, and everything else? Most people who do this exercise find at least 2 or 3 significant spending categories they genuinely did not realize were that high. The avoidance pattern keeps those numbers fuzzy. Shining a light on them is the first act of actually being in control. You cannot navigate somewhere you refuse to look at the map. The second thing, and this one that makes the biggest practical difference, is to automate your savings before your brain gets involved. Here's the fundamental problem with saving what's left over at the end of the month. There is never anything left over, because your lifestyle will expand to fill the available space every single time. So instead, you flip the script. The moment your paycheck hits, an automatic transfer moves a set amount to a separate savings or investment account before you ever touch it. You don't see it, you don't feel it, you don't make a daily decision about it. It just moves. Many financial researchers refer to this as paying yourself first, and the psychological reason it works is because it removes the decision from the danger zone. Your willpower doesn't have to fight your pattern if the money is already gone before the pattern activates.
Now, you might be thinking, but Ben, what if I genuinely don't have anything extra to automate? And I hear that, I really do. So start with whatever you can. Seriously, even $25 a month matters, not for the amount itself, but for the identity shift. Because every time that transfer goes through, your brain gets a little signal that says, I am someone who saves. And that identity, that self-concept, is what slowly starts to erode the old patterns. The amount grows over time. The identity shift is what matters first. The third thing is to create what I'd call a pause protocol for spending. This is specifically for the emotional spending pattern. The mechanics are simple. Before any non-essential purchase above a certain threshold, let's say $30, you choose your number, you institute a mandatory waiting period. 24 hours for smaller things, 72 hours for larger ones. You don't say no, you just say not yet. And what you'll find is that a significant percentage of those purchases, things that felt urgent and necessary in the moment, completely lose their pull after a day. The emotional trigger that drove the desire passes, and you look at the item the next day and feel nothing. That feeling of nothing is you catching your pattern in the act. That's what impulse spending actually is. It's emotion pretending to be desire. The fourth thing, and this is where we start getting into actual wealth building, is to get specific about where your money is going to go rather than just where you hope it won't go. Most budgets are built on restriction. I won't spend more than X on this. But restriction without direction is just white-knuckling it, and white-knuckling it is exhausting and unsustainable. Instead, build what I'd call a spending plan with intention. For every dollar of income, decide in advance what job it has. Some goes to fixed costs, some to variable living expenses, some to savings, some to investing, some to a guilt-free spending category where you can buy whatever you want, no questions asked. That last category is important. If there's no valve for fun spending, the pressure builds and eventually explodes in a binge. This is where it gets really interesting, because investing is the part of personal finance where the pattern problem shows up in the most expensive way. A 2022 Gallup poll found that 58% of Americans own some form of stock investment. But of those people, many are either not invested at all aggressively enough for their age, or they're making emotional decisions with their portfolio, panic selling when markets dip, chasing returns on whatever was hot last quarter, or just never touching it out of fear. All of those are pattern behaviors showing up in the investment arena. Here's the brutal truth about investing that most people aren't ready to hear. The best investment strategy is almost always the boring one. A simple, low-cost index fund that tracks the broad market, contributed to consistently and left alone for decades, outperforms the vast majority of actively managed funds, and certainly outperforms the average individual investor trying to time the market. A landmark study by Dalbar Inc., which tracks investor behavior against market returns, consistently finds that the average investor significantly underperforms the market, not because of bad finds, but because of bad behavior. Buying high when excitement is in the air, selling low when fear takes over. That's the pattern destroying investment returns. The math of the market isn't the problem. The psychology of the investor is. So if you're not investing yet, the question to ask yourself honestly isn't, do I know enough? You can learn as you go, and index funds are genuinely not complicated. The question is, what story am I telling myself about why I can't start? Is it that you don't have enough money? Is it that you'll wait until the market is less volatile? Is it that you'll figure it out when you have more time? Because those are all the avoidance pattern in costume. The market being volatile is not a reason not to invest. It's literally just the normal condition of markets. Waiting for perfect conditions is the same as not starting, and every year you wait is a year of compound growth you don't get back. If you're in your 30s and you start investing $300 a month today, you end up with substantially more than someone who starts investing $500 10 years from now, even though that second person invests more money total. The time in the market is the variable that matters most, and the pattern of delay is the thing stealing it from you. We've covered the psychology, the math, the patterns, the practical steps. But I want to end on this because I think it's the thing that actually makes all the other stuff stick. Real, lasting financial change doesn't come from knowing more strategies. It comes from shifting how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who is bad with money, your behavior will consistently confirm that identity. Not because you're weak, but because human beings are powerfully motivated to behave in ways that are consistent with who they believe they are. It's called identity-based behavior, and it's one of the most robust findings in behavioral psychology. So the move isn't just to change the behaviors. The move is to start building evidence for a different identity. Every time you check your account balance instead of avoiding it, that's evidence. Every time the automatic savings transfer goes through, that's evidence. Every time you wait 24 hours and decide not to buy something, that's evidence. Every time you contribute to your investment account, even a small amount, that's evidence. And slowly, that pile of evidence starts to rewrite the story. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment of transformation, just gradually through consistent small actions until one day you realize the old patterns don't pull as hard as they used to. You are not your past financial decisions. The patterns you've been running were never really yours to begin with. Most of them were handed to you by circumstances you didn't choose, environments you grew up in, and messages you absorbed before you were old enough to filter them. The fact that you're here, watching this, asking these questions, that's already you breaking pattern. That's already the shift beginning. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is easy. Changing patterns that have been running for years, sometimes decades, takes real attention and real consistency. But I want you to hear this clearly. You are not fighting a willpower battle. You are not fighting an income battle. You are identifying a pattern, understanding where it came from, and making deliberate, systematic choices to replace it with something that actually serves your future. That is a winnable game. That is something you can actually do. Start small. Automate one thing. Look at your numbers once a week, just 5 minutes. Install the pause before one purchase. Open an investment account, even if you only put $50 in it. Not because $50 is going to make you rich, because $50 is proof that you are the kind of person who invests. And that person, that identity, is the foundation everything else gets built on. If this video helped you see something differently about your relationship with money, please share it with someone you think needs to hear it. Hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. And subscribe because we go deep on this stuff every week. I'll see you in the next one.